Hello, Disobey, and welcome to my talk on cloud security posture management, or beyond code security, how CSPM can help to secure your cloud and avoid configuration disasters. I'm Mikael Nilsson. I'm the product security lead for customer intelligence at SAS. I've been working for SAS for more than 13 years in various different roles. I did a short stint as the information security manager for the Nordics. And before I joined SAS, I worked for F-Secure, which is a company probably most of you know. Before we get started, I want to share a few words about SAS. Our vision at SAS is to be the most trustworthy analytics partner on the planet. And our mission is to provide knowledge in the moments that matter. And for that, we build software with analytics in its core. We have platform software such as SAS Viya, which you might have heard of, and then we have industry-specific solutions. I work with our marketing product space, so customer intelligence. And our main product is Customer Intelligence 360, which is a marketing solution designed to reimagine marketing with trusted analytics and powerful decisioning. CI360 is a hybrid multi-tenant software as a service offering. And what we mean by hybrid is that the solution combines both traditional on-premise software and software as a service. We follow DevSecOps methodologies. We have automated CI/CD pipelines, which we use to deliver features for our customers at high velocity. In my talk today, I'm going to talk about cloud security posture management and why it matters, and especially why it matters to application developers. Then I'll talk about what CSPM is and how it achieves those things that we need. And then I'll share lessons we've learned on our path to better cloud security posture and some tips and tricks that you can take with you as you're starting out with your cloud security posture management journey. Let's start with some facts. The Verizon 2023 Data Breach Investigations Report shows misconfigurations account for many confirmed breaches. If you look at the figure here, the orange line here represents miscellaneous errors. Now, within that category, we have misconfigurations, which are represented by a green line here. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of that going on, and in recent years, it's peaked a bit. And that's because cloud infrastructure is being used more and more. And it's easier for configuration slip to occur and some of those cloud infrastructure services being not secure. And if we take a look at OWASP top 10 list, in their investigations, in 90% of the applications they examined, they found some form of misconfiguration. 90%. That's a lot. So, and because of that, security misconfigurations moved up from number 6 on the list to number 5 between the 2017 and 2021 editions. OK, so let's take an imaginary example from an app developer perspective and app development cycle kind of security tooling type of things, and see where CSPM might help. So we've got an application where our developers completed threat modeling and addressed the identified threats to the application. We've run static analysis scans of our source code and determined that there's no weaknesses or no weaknesses that cause immediate alarm. We've also run dynamic and interactive application security testing to make sure that we don't have any web application vulnerabilities or weaknesses there. That looks good as well. Really great. And we also run software composition analysis to determine if we have any vulnerabilities in any of the third-party libraries that we're including in our code. That looks clean as well. So far, so good. We also do scans of our hosts and images and containers and to make sure that there's no underlying vulnerabilities where we're actually running that app. Still looks really good. Maybe we're even using some more advanced techniques, like runtime application self-protection, which monitors threats to the application as it's running deployed in production. All looks good there as well. No threats to the application. So what's the barn door over there? Well, turns out we have an S3 bucket sitting there open to the internet, which is storing our application data. It's not part of the application. It's part of the cloud infrastructure. Maybe we have a SQL server that allows unrestricted inbound access to that database. Again, not part of the app that we developed. It's the infrastructure behind it. Or maybe we have a BigQuery data set that contains customer data, which is publicly accessible. These are the type of high-risk scenarios that CSPM addresses. It looks at the infrastructure outside of the application, where you're actually deploying your space. And we can go further than that. Attackers use chaining attacks, typically where they utilize multiple vulnerabilities or weaknesses and chain them to cause a larger consequence on that thing. So as attackers gain initial access, maybe they try to establish persistence or move laterally within the infrastructure. So think about a developer or a customer clicking a phishing link, and then the attackers gain authenticated access to your app. OK, that doesn't seem too harmful. But what can they do from there? What can they do when one issue occurs? Or what if there's a zero-day vulnerability in a third-party library which allows attackers that initial access? Or what if your VPN endpoints get compromised? We've certainly seen that in the news lately. So what can the attackers do if they compromise your VPN? These are the types of things that cloud security posture management helps with. They mitigate risks in your infrastructure and make it harder for attackers to move around. So if we map that to our DevSecOps toolchain, these are the tools that I just talked about. We have threat modeling in the plan phase. We have static application scanning, dynamic application scanning, interactive application scanning, and software composition analysis, where we verify these things. Then we're doing host and container scanning to ensure that the operating systems and the containers are OK, and maybe we have runtime application self-protection. Where does CSPM sit? It sits somewhere between configuration and detection, in my opinion, but I think it kind of is all around the place. Before we get further, I want to talk about security at SaaS and how we're addressing security at SaaS, because I think that's a valid point on why CSPM is important too, especially us. So we're divided in roughly 2 parts for security at SaaS. I'm in research and development, or R&D, and we're traditionally responsible for product security. Then we have cloud and information services, or CIS, who are traditionally responsible for infrastructure security. Now, SaaS has been developing software since 1976. So we have a fairly well-established set of policies and standards when it comes to software development. And traditionally, that means that we're responsible for securing the software before it ships to our customers. And obviously after as well, by patches and hotfixes and so on. But in a traditional sense, we package the software, and we have to do everything that we can to make sure that it's secure when it goes out through our door. Now, cloud and infrastructure services, or cloud and information services, are not only responsible for SaaS infrastructure and the SaaS data. We run customer workloads in SaaS cloud, and we've been doing that since 2000. But that's taking the packaged software and deploying that on SaaS infrastructure to process customer workloads. So CIS also has fairly well-established policies and standards for securing data where we process and places where we process customer data. So they have responsibility of the security of the hosted software after deployment. Now, software as a service is different. And I think here is where collaborative tools like CSPM play a big part. Now, it's not just cloud information services' responsibility to be responsible of the infrastructure, because we're deploying infrastructure as code. And that flows from research and development. So now, developers actually have part of the responsibility for ensuring that they deploy secure infrastructure together with their application. All right, so what is CSPM? CSPM is a tool which has compliance rules or rule sets based on frameworks, regulations, and enterprise policy and best practices, right? It uses those rules to detect findings or security misconfigurations in cloud infrastructure. So compute, storage, network type of things that are in the cloud. And then they include responses to those findings. And those responses may be either automated or manual, depending on your solution. And I think a big thing that I didn't put on slide here is the auditability and tracking of those things. So tracking the progress and proving that you're complying to those policies over time. OK, so next I'm just going to talk about lots of different products and which product is best based for you, because that's what we're here for, right? No, I'm just kidding. There's lots of CSPM products out there. There's open source products, there's proprietary products, and there's excellent both open source and proprietary products as well. So take your pick, but do your own research. The solution space is evolving a whole lot, so there's new vendors coming out with CSPM products all the time. It is a very evolving space. OK, so we use Datadog for CSPM, and that doesn't mean you should, but I'm still going to talk a bit about it. So we use Datadog for application performance monitoring and centralized logging. And we've done that before we started using CSPM. So it was a logical choice to just add a module from Datadog to do CSPM as well. And that provides us with unified reporting and visualization of our cloud infrastructure posture. And it's tied to our application logging as well, which is valuable. Now, as I mentioned, we have two different teams which traditionally haven't been working so much together, but now they are. The benefit of Datadog was that Datadog was used both by research and development and CIS. So a familiar tool enables collaboration. And now it provides actionable results for both developers and ops people to work with. And it's easy to drill down to the resources. OK. So next, I'll talk a bit about lessons we've learned. I'll talk about choosing frameworks and why that is important. I will talk about our approach to findings and triage. And then I'll show an example of how to apply an enterprise policy in cloud security posture management. So these different CSPM products, they have a lot of embedded frameworks which you can measure your compliance against. And it's really important to pick the right frameworks that make sense. There's more generic ones, like ISO 27001, SOC 2, and NIST CSF. And then there's more specific ones, depending on what you're doing with your cloud application, like GDPR compliance, PCI DSS compliance, or HIPAA compliance. For us, the most important pieces here are ISO 27001 compliance, because we're certified, so that's logical, and GDPR compliance, because we're processing customer data. And we also utilize CIS benchmarks, because our enterprise policy requires that were aligned with CIS benchmarks. But take your own pick and use some time there. Why that is important? Well, this is a sample using mock data. That's what I'm using with all of these from Datadog. If you start out and you don't pick your frameworks well, you're going to have a lot of findings to deal with. So it's much easier to focus if you pick your favorite benchmark that you go against. Maybe you add some others when you go further down the line. OK, so our approach to findings. We like to have regular CSPM meetings, bringing different stakeholders to the table. So we bring both developers and operations people together into a meeting to discuss the findings that CSPM outputs. Because there's many ways you can mitigate those findings, and it's good to discuss those. Then we triage those findings, and we roughly put them into 3 different categories. The first category that we try to handle first are findings that have a low risk of implementation. Not low risk in, like, there's low risk of threat, but low risk of implementation. But they have a high impact to our security posture. Now, these are flip a switch type of findings, and those we try to get out of the way first as we're triaging. An example of that might be what I just used as an example, the public access to an S3 bucket. Now, these are either bucket or account level settings, which you can just switch on, and then you're saved from disaster. The second category are high implementation risk type findings, but ones that also have a high impact to our security posture. We want to identify these early because we want to plan that implementation phase. Or maybe we have to look at compensating controls if it's too hard to implement. Maybe it requires us to go and edit those framework rules and change them to be different. I think that's an important point as well. The CSPM tools will give you rules, but it's not like they're set in stone, right? There's different ways you can achieve the same result. So always bear that in mind and think about, OK, this is really hard to implement. Well, should I do something different? And then implement those rules as compensating controls. An example of that might be unencrypted EBS volumes. Now, EBS volumes, you can't just simply encrypt. You need new encrypted EBS volumes, and then you need to migrate your data from unencrypted to encrypted EBS volumes. So there's a bit more process there. There's other examples out there, I'm sure. The third category that we try to look at are just findings which we have high volume of. So let's say we have thousands of hosts that are affected by the same thing, and also issues that we regress on. So we've solved an issue earlier, and then that pops up again. Those are alarming things. Somehow our controls are not working. We have an excellent cloud engineering team who is responsible for writing governance rules and automation into our pipelines so that we ensure that we mitigate these types of findings. So that's work for them. OK, so how do I track what's going on in CSPM? I like to build some performance metrics in CSPM so that I can track my progress towards better security posture. Things like a security posture score. That's something that Datadog calculates, but you can create your own. Or the amount of resources that I have at risk. Those are good metrics that I like to measure over time. Then there's severity trends, and maybe that's a good filter as well if you're starting out. You probably want to look at those criticals first. No, remember, this is demo data. This is not actual data. Another place to start is, well, which type of resources are mostly failing? So sorting by criticals and how many do I have of them? That's probably something you should deal with. All right, finally, let's look at the actual rules and how you can apply enterprise policy. This is a sample default rule from the Datadog set, and I think it looks at our load balancers and what SSL policy we're applying to them. And this is ensuring that we're in compliance with NIST rules for SSL policy. Here's a list of different policies you can apply. Now, in Datadog, it's as simple as cloning that rule and then going for an enterprise policy. Our enterprise policy states that we must use TLS 1.3 on our load balancers. So I create specific rules within the Cloud Security Posture Management to measure that. And this one's going to alert me if I strive away from that. We're still OK if we do NIST, but this is a finding that we need to look at. So you can do both. You can map towards frameworks, or you can map towards your enterprise policy. And the various CSPM products out there will certainly support this type of features where you can write your own rules, and that's where the power really comes from. Now you have rules which monitor not only your framework or regulatory compliance, but also compliance to your enterprise policy. And that's all I had for today, and I think we have time for a couple of questions here as well, so shoot away. Thank you.